All right, cool.
Nice to meet you. Do you have any questions before we get started?
What's the meaning of life?
Can I get back to you on that?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have any questions I can answer?
What's the perfect chord?
Oh, I really like a 9 sharp 11 13.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What's your favorite chord?
I'll go with yours for now, till
Okay.
another chord presents itself.
Okay.
Am
Well,
I
we
too
haven't officially
dark?
started yet. And this is so much fun, but I think we should start. Uh,
All right.
we can continue to amuse each other. But if you don't have any questions, I'm going to just get it going, okay?
All right, cool.
Okay. Here we go. I'm going to get the camera back on me. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We have three things to celebrate today. First of all, it is my birthday. I'm very excited to be with you on that day. Second of all, this is our 101st guest. That's another exciting milestone. And the third is our guest himself, who I cannot wait to introduce to you. Before we do, let me tell you where you are and what we're doing here. You're watching Truer MU. On this channel, I learn things I've always wanted to learn and meet people I've always wanted to meet, and I share that with you. There's hundreds of videos here about all sorts of things. Most of them are music, but we also have videos about writing and math and learning. So whatever I'm crazy enough to want to know, you will also know. Please check us out at Truer MU on YouTube. And now the story, because there's always a story. I've been aware of the band The Mommyheads for a long time through my friend Steve Espinola, whom you've seen interviewed on this show. Only recently did Steve convince me to listen to The Mommyheads. I'd heard one song by them once on a mixtape of his, but I actually sat down and did a deep dive, and I was amazed by what I heard. Now, just by coincidence, I happen to have the good fortune, as you know, to interview Chris Rail last episode. And he put me in touch with Adam Elk, the lead singer and head songwriter of the Mommyheads. And Adam was kind enough to join us on the show. So, Adam Elk, lead singer and main songwriter for the band the Mommyheads, welcome to our show.
I feel welcome. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. All the usual things people say.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm only a recent fan. I've only been listening for 2 or 3 months, but
You're not alone out there. There's
well, hopefully, I'm more enthusiastic than other people who've only listened for 2 or 3 months. We'll decide.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what I want to do, you've been interviewed many times and you've talked about a lot of things about the band. I don't want to duplicate too much what you've said in other interviews because you've said some wonderful stuff. I want to talk a lot more about songwriting and your music making in this one than the history of the band so much. Although we will get at the history of the band through that. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, first, I'm curious about the music you loved as a kid versus the music you love now and anything in between. Is it the same music or have your tastes changed? Start at the beginning.
Nothing's changed. I'm still discovering bands from the 70s.
Yeah, me too.
I love the late 60s. I love the 70s. I love the 80s. Didn't like the 90s, which kind of blew because we were in the 90s trying to do something.
Right.
And we felt like a square peg, round hole, et cetera, et cetera. But man, I think the 70s was the pinnacle of recording. I think the 60s, 70s, early 80s was a pinnacle for certain type of songwriting. The short pop song um, was, I think, hit many, many peaks. And I think, like anybody, as a child, you're very open and aware of things, and you're a big sponge. As you get older, you start to think that you're wise, that you think you've been around the block, and no one's going to fool me, and everything's corrupt, and whatever everybody's saying now. And there's something about that 7 to 12-year-old mentality that I've tried to maintain, and I've also tried to maintain the things that I loved from those ages, even 5 and 4, having singles, playing a single over and over again. Music seemed more scarce. The band had to kick butt because they were playing live. The recording engineer had to be really good and get that one take down. There wasn't all this perfection. It was sort of like, yeah, that felt good. That sounded good. You guys played well. There was so many things that were in the moment and felt very human, and it felt like the peak of recording in that sense, just humans in a room playing together, and the song was just king. If you had a great song, it would be hard to mess it up. You could, but once the song was together and arranged and the message was clear, it was just don't muck it up. So we're in a different age now where we muck it up with overindulgence in the process. We muck it up with overindulgence in the songwriting. We wait too long. Musicians wait too long to put stuff out. They're afraid, oh, I'm going to put it on the internet. All these opinions. Maybe I'll wait another year. So there's a lot of good stuff from when I grew up, and I feel like I'm very fortunate. And yeah, I'm still trying to get the Mommyheads to sound like a couple of songs from the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
One time we were making the Geffen record, and Tony Visconti, who produced all the David Bowie great albums and tons of other music, came in with John Lennon's mistress. I'm spacing on her name. Last name was Pang or something like that. And they came into Tony Berg's studio and listened to the Geffen record, and he said, first she said it sounds like the Beatles, which I thought was great because she knew John Lennon, and May Pang. And he said the drums sounded like Derek and the Dominoes. And I thought that was a compliment. Some of the greatest drumming ever. So we've been just trying to, it's like we're just in the search of the same thing, just trying to perfect it.
Yeah.
I think that, and that goes for relationships. The first time you meet someone, you feel that charge. 30 years later, you're still excited by that charge, and it's a certain chemical reaction. And it's hard to best a lot of these things that we grew up with for what it was. It wasn't hip hop. It wasn't a lot of things, but for what it was, I'm still obsessing over certain records and certain songs. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does. I agree. And, as I've taught classes on music going all the way back to the teens, I mean, there's just so much music out there that's so wonderful that wasn't made with this perfection mindset. And it just keeps coming at you. It's pretty astounding.
you can feel the perfectionist. You can feel the sort of neuroses in something that's too on the grid now and too thought over. I just watched something about Marlon Brando, and he had cue cards on people's chests as they faced him. He didn't want to even practice. He wanted to be so in the moment. And considering he was the best actor of his lifetime, of his generation, and he wouldn't even do a run through, says a lot about the human condition and how we're our own worst enemy in terms of any kind of process.
Interesting.
You know, dishes were made in the kitchen on a whim. Stroganoff. You know, they weren't obsessed over. They weren't put together as a chemistry set. It was an accident. We're constantly making these dishes musically if we just let ourselves do it.
Who's an artist that you've recently discovered from maybe the 70s or early 80s that you never knew about that you're just thrilled about now?
Well, a good day for me is finding that artist. And I stumbled upon, I sort of heard about him, Avery. It's a band that made one record.
Wait a minute. No,
79.
Yeah.
They were out of Seattle. I'll spell it.
Okay.
Aviary.
Ah.
And it's just the lost Queen record, the lost New England record, that band New England. It's like Jellyfish 11 years earlier. It's like the Posies 11 years earlier.
Yeah.
And they made one record. It didn't work out, and they sort of and they disbanded. But what a realized record. And I just really came across it. I heard the name, but you know how it is when in passing, I listened to the record and oh my God, the lead guy's Brad Love and there's another guy, Toby Bowen. That's a good day for me when I find a full record that's, to me, its own thing. It's absolute beauty and gorgeousness and pop mastery. And then and here's the problem with the 70s and 80s. It was so expensive to make a record. You needed a label behind you. That when you broke up and you didn't have that budget, you went away for 40 years. Now, you still got your Pro Tools, your Logic. So you cannot disappear as easily now if you're amazing. But I would check out this band Avery as one of many bands. I try to find a band a day from the 70s or the 80s that was lost. And I'm usually successful.
Are you aware of the producers?
Yes. Oh, man. You got to look at the back cover of a record that really never came out. I knew the guy's name, but we can put it in the listing. I'll get it to you.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
was an established producer. Um,
No, 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 no. The band, the producers.
oh, the producers. Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a band I discovered. Grew up with them, but didn't know much about them until I interviewed Tom Wehrman, who produced their first record. They had a similar situation to you, where they went and they had a nice arc and they were doing great and they were on Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve, and then all of a sudden they just plummeted. But that first record is one of the best records I think ever. It's better than anything the Cars ever put out. It's just stellar. It's pristine, and one wonders how something that good could vanish. They're around, they're still touring, but as old men. But
They were on a schedule of a festival that we played,
yeah,
and it's funny. There's a lot of bands that don't exist anymore. Like the Records had Starry Eyes or something like that. It was like a perfect song, and I remember having both their records growing up, and for a while they weren't even on anything.
yeah,
And you never know if it's a label legal problem,
right.
or it's a manager owns it, or the publishing, or there's and you got to literally go to a record store to find some of these bands.
How about Judy Sill? Have you heard of her?
Yes,
Yeah, another
somebody,
astounding find.
yeah, a friend of mine sent me Judy Sill's music, um, and I thought it was great.
Andrew Partridge loved her.
Anything Andy likes, we
Yeah.
follow.
Well, let's get back to you. So you've described your early upbringing as working class. Tell me a little about your parents, what they did, and whether they were musical.
My dad loved music. He played piano in pickup bands. It was fun for him. My mom has a great voice, and she did some acting, and she loved being. She was in a couple of musicals when she was 20. She was in Dial M for Murder, but they never pursued it. They were both teachers. They loved to travel. We were, I guess, lower middle class, but we were still middle class. We didn't have a lot of things and stuff, but I was happy.
Yeah.
Getting a Fender Stratocaster when I was 13 was a big deal, and they were great to me. I wanted a 4-track. We somehow made it work. So I had a cassette player. I was a 4-track generation.
Tascam?
It was Yamaha.
Okay.
It was the 4-piece. I thought it looked cooler. It had a mixing bay that I could take with me if I wanted to mix a live thing.
Nice.
I really studied it. It had a cassette holder, just to. But I learned all the techniques that I imagined the Beatles to do. I would do 3 tracks and bounce to one, and keep doing that until it started to sound like really bad. And we put that. So a lot of the good stuff from that is Swiss Army Knife,
Yeah.
which I submitted to Simple Machines, which was a hot indie label that no one will know now, but in 90 to 95, Jenny Toomey had this mail order service. It was the original Spotify, but for indie kids. And she would do singles and cassettes, and every month you get something. It was monthly. She's Simple Machines was a contemporary of Discord and Teen Beat. And we had played with Unrest, which was the Teen Beat band, Mark. We never played with any Discord bands, or maybe a couple, but that was the DC Triangle. And Chris Rail came out of DC. And they seemed to have a cooler scene than New York in the late 80s. New York was kind of a shell of itself. So we put that out. I sent her my demos from when I was 14, 15, 16, and she put it out, cassette only, 100 copies. And it kind of grew in mythology of indie kids, and I found all the original cassettes. I found my original Tascam double cassette player. I put the cassettes in. Nothing had changed. This was 2 years ago. I sent all the songs to Fred Kevorkian, who masters White Stripes, Nine Inch Nails. Like, he's pro, and he mastered them and put him back in phase. And I got to say, it's one of the coolest sounding records. It's cassette. So there's proof of the 4-track generation will never die.
Yeah, absolutely. My poor Tascam finally bit the dust, and I've never been the same. So,
Sad.
well, we're going to get to Swiss Army Knife in a few minutes, but I have a couple other questions for you. When did you write your first piece, or when are you aware that you wrote your first piece?
I think my first actual song where I wrote lyrics down on a piece of paper was just a rip of Led Zeppelin and Kiss, and I had like a classic term like "steal away." like steal away, but it was
Right.
stealing away. And it had a kiss groove, and I was probably 9, 10, 11. And from then on, it was a song a day or a song every 2 days. I would be in class writing songs. I've never stopped. I've probably documented, 1,000 and undocumented 1,000. There's reams of. I'm always trying to write the perfect song. I'm a neurotic songwriter, and I love it. I couldn't be happier. I'm a pig in bleep. It's like
Yeah.
it's the best quest on for me on the planet is to try to do a 3-minute song or a 5-minute song that doesn't feel long, like when will this end, but also doesn't feel short. Like that went by so fast.
Yeah.
It just feels it puts time into perspective. A good song could do that.
I'm going to share something with you that's interesting for me. Now, I grew up as a huge Billy Joel fan when I was young. And then I got older. I continued to be a huge fan, but I did get a little tired of it. I mean, Billy Joel, he takes from so many influences. And if you don't know those influences, you think, wow, Billy Joel. And then you hear the stuff he was copying, and all of a sudden, Billy Joel seems a little pastiche.
Like Led Zeppelin.
I guess so. And so I was, but recently we're going to be doing a Billy Joel sing along in about a week and a half, and I'm playing the part of Billy Joel. And so for the first time in my life, I had to sit down and learn the songs and actually play them all the way through. And after being so jaded and so tired of these songs, it totally changed my perspective playing them because these songs are long and complicated and they never sag. The
No.
craft in them is just, I have to admit, I thought I knew them, but I'm just astounded. Having written a lot of songs myself and wrestled with the beast, I'm like, holy cow, how did you do that?
There's a thing in all industries called craft,
Yeah.
and people don't even know what it is. I think craftsmen never even stop to think about it. For me, it's you're trying to build a toaster that literally when it's done, the toast is perfect and it pops into your hands. And that's a great songs are impenetrable because the craft is so great. And sometimes they're 19-year-olds that write them, and sometimes they're in their 50s. It's ageless. And when I hear bands that don't have the craft down, it's sad. I feel sad because they might have the live show down or the recording's cool or they got the attitude. But Billy Joel was a master of craft, and I think that that is the first thing that makes him a star more than anything else. And
Yeah.
that goes for Paul Simon, that goes for McCartney. If you really break down their voices, Billy knows he's never going to be Ray Charles. He'll never be Ray Charles. But what he's got is craft, and it makes up for everything else. So when you play the song, it's so enlightening to hear all these passing chords, to hear bass notes dropping as the vocals move up and to support rhythm tech, like even the feel changes and it speeds up and slows down and the pacing changes. And if you're in pursuit of craft, you never feel like you're going to get there. But you wait for someone else to say, yeah, that's a great song. But for you, you're never going to get there. But that's part of life. The journey of life is to never feel like you've arrived.
Yeah.
So people forget about it, but man, and that's why bands that went to 4-track, guided by voices, et cetera, the demos that were on Simple Machines, even Dave Grohl's early demos after Nirvana, he submitted them to Jenny and she put them out. The quality doesn't matter. If the song is great, we don't care. It's a nice thing to have a great sounding song, but man, a great song makes up for a lot of ills. So
Well, in your pursuit of the great song, how many different ways have you tried to write a song, or has your compositional process pretty much stayed the same all these years?
for me, I'm a top line guy. I need melody. Number one. Number two, I need rhythmic intensity or something to interest me rhythmically. So in one sense, I love the Beatles, the Bee Gees, the Zombies. I love great melodies. I love like English bands that followed Bach, although I'm not a big Bach fan, but they loved top lining. And I'm also a fan of progressive music because the rhythms are interesting. And I love when a songwriter forgets he's in 4/4, she's in 4/4, and you get 7/8, 5, whatever. And because the rhythms are following the melody,
Yeah.
they're subordinate to the melody. But then a drummer comes in and goes, "Did you realize you just went through 5 different time signatures? I'm going to do something cool." And then you have progressive pop, and that's what I love. I love progressive pop.
Like Blondie and the strangeness in Heart of Glass, or is it Call Me? Like I forget which one.
when you don't care anymore that there's no 4/4, I'm in heaven. There's a great songwriter, a contemporary of ours named Chris Merritt, and you check him out. There's two R's, two T's, but he has this thing on piano where you don't know what he's in anymore, and you just love it, and it feels natural because the melody's solid. So if you and our drummer Dan Fisherman follows melody. My favorite drummers follow melody. Mick Fleetwood, Ringo Starr, um,
Oh,
Terry Chambers. They follow the melody with the drums. They give you an intense beat, but it's always the toms are even answering melodies. And lame drummers to me just beat the drum kit. And so when a great band is special when the melody is everyone sees that as the front of the boat, but then the boat with the great melody widens to withstand the seas breaking against it with the band's counter rhythms, harmonies, chordal depth, bass. You know, bass is an incredible instrument. I always tell Jason, our bass player, you're playing melody all the time. That's a lot. People think bass is easy. It's not. You're doing counter melodies. You're doing competitive melodies. You're supporting the main melody. You know, the easiest thing is the chord.
yeah.
That's just you know. So, but for me, a melody is the thing. And when a band respects the melody, they can't do no wrong for me if it's a great melody.
I spoke to Bruce Thomas of Elvis Costello and the Attractions, and
Oh,
studying those recordings and talking to him, I was amazed at how, well, first of all, how well the band worked together and the collaborative process they used, but just like you said, how careful they were with the melody and how they added interest to the melody, never took away from it. It's really amazing.
yeah. So, you know, in this day and age with all the political stuff happening, I'm not a religious person. I see why people like religion because it sums things up nicely. It talks about only the best humans of the past, saints we call them, you know. Um, and it gives you a perspective of the human condition that seems positive and is worth saving and is worth being hopeful about. And so I'm starting to see it because there's so much chaos in the internet and everybody's divided and we all hate each other. But for me, going to see Elvis and the Attractions is just as good. I feel like I'm seeing absolute consummate musicians supporting a song. And it breaks my heart when I hear they argued and they didn't get along. But you know what? Tension actually is a key component. It when the bass player goes, I don't like that chord. I'm going to throw this note in to change it to something I like. It has the depth of field just go, you know, and you know, he just added another floor to that building. That's why I have, as a songwriter, zero preciousness about my songs. I feel like you give a great band or great musicians those songs, you've got one story. When they add their three stories, now we got a building. And for me, it's the closest thing to what religion tries to do, aside from all the bad stuff. When you look at the good stuff, it gives you hope about this race, the human race. For me, a great band playing great songs gives me hope.
Do you listen to your recordings?
I have to because I'm the producer.
I mean, when you're done with them.
I try not to. I try to give it a break. My ears get burned. I don't know if it's good or bad. But you know, it's weird. When they do pop up, I'm suggested our band sometimes.
You might like them.
You know, I realize that it's really coming when I hear it and it feels enriching to me. I realize that we didn't make this for any other reason other than it's us. It's soul enriching for us. It gives us internal hope as a band, and it does that to me. And I love when I listen to it and I don't hear the moving parts anymore. That's the best. But when I hear the moving parts, it's hard to listen to. So it's two sets of the brain. I have to take a real big step back. And when it just sounds like this mush of gloriousness, I'm good.
Hmm.
And I don't nitpick.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the band before we get into the main feast of tonight. Talk about how the band began, and I'm also curious about the origin of the name.
Okay, I'll make this fast because I've said it many times. So we were CBGB's band. We were a three-piece. We were high school. Hilly Crystal said, "I'll give you a slot." I said, "Great." He goes, "Okay." Hey, waiting. He's like, "I need a name," and I'm like, "You need a name?" I was so artsy, trying to be artsy. So I gave him three. I gave Louise, who was the booker, three options, and they liked that the best. And for me, it was a combination of Mothers of Invention, which I liked better than Zappa because it was a band,
Yeah.
and it was Talking Heads, were my two favorite bands at the time. Uh, and I was also living with my mother, so she'll say it was about her. So, and then that band sort of broke up or fizzled, and Hilly said, "Go see this band, The Connotations." And he said they're influenced by XTC and Camper Van Beethoven. I went and saw them and loved them. And afterwards I demanded that we play together. And eventually I whittled them down and they joined the Mommyheads. And so Dan, the drummer, and Mike, the keyboardist, I've been playing with since 90.
Yeah.
And it's been literally getting better every year. And Jason, I met in San Francisco when I did a solo project, which I loved, but it didn't work because I felt it was too much of me. But when Jeff, the original bass player, fizzled out on us, Jason was in New York and it was a perfect fit. And Jason was so Dan, me and Michael love XTC. We early Genesis, Thomas Dolby, that solo record, Wireless, a ton of stuff from the early 80s. They sculpted their band around Joe Jackson, Be Crazy. I love Be Crazy. I love everything Joe Jackson. So we had the same influences. Jason comes from a punk rock, West Coast, Agent Orange, Iron Maiden, Rush. So he brings a lot of that virility and that sort of let's not get too kooky. Let's get the groove solid, which is amazing. If we were four of us being kooky, we would kind of spiral out into Corksville. So Jason was great to have in the band, and he's evolving, which is wonderful. We all evolve and de-evolve, and we watch each other, and it's an awesome experiment. And so we had ups and downs. Five or six records in the '90s. We were on Geffen. We had a ton of money, going from poor and living off nothing to $500,000 deal, and then we got dropped. We had Don Was. He'd done two records in '97, Steel Wheels, Rolling Stones, and us. So we kind of had our ego pumped up, and Jim Scott did Wildflowers and Rolling Stones and us. So then we got dropped, then we broke up, and then we came back in '08. We had a fan base in Sweden, and we've been making music since then with a couple of breaks, and we're on our 17th record. And yeah, it's fun.
You summed it up really nicely. So here we go. This is what I want to do with our time. I want to talk about every album you've done one at a time, and I'm just going to pick one song from that album I'm going to
Oh, this could be tough. This could be
should
tough.
be fun. So I just want to give you, my 2 cents about each record, get a little word from you, and then a song and ask you about one of my favorite songs from that record. Are
Okay,
you up for the challenge?
let's do it. Boom.
Okay.